Usually when people think about a tank in RPGs, they think about a very durable character that is hardly going to receive that much damage, but it usually is referred to as someone that is not going to deal that much damage in return, because in RPG you have the tank and you also have the DPS. Well, in this case, a tank is going to be the literal sense of the word. It's going to be a tank that it's also going to have a cannon. So this character right here is basically a Terminator. It's going to be an unkillable Paladin that is going to be able to one-shot, yes you have me right, that is going to be able to one-shot people like there is no tomorrow, and on top of that, he's going to be able to do that such a thing 4 times in a row. Now, when people think about a Sorcadin on the 5th edition of Dungeons & Dragons, there are many archetypes of Sorcadins as well. In this case scenario, that might be confusing as well, because you might be thinking that we are going to be a heavily armored Paladin that is going to have access to high level tier spells from the Sorcerer, and then that is going to be the canon. Well, no, basically this is just going to be a better Paladin than the original Paladin that you would have. So this is going to be the basic archetype of a Paladin, a holy warrior that is going to be smiting people, and that is mostly where most of our damage is going to be coming from. Basically what we are getting out of this synergy is to be able to upcast as much as possible our divine smites and still be able to deal quite a lot of damage, and still be able as well to have high and lots of survivability. So in a sense, this is just a better Paladin than your regular Paladin. Now, one more thing to have in mind is that the Paladin, since relies on high charisma, I'm not going to spoil conversations for you right here, but just to have in mind that in Act 2 and even in Act 1, every single time there's going to be many times where you're going to have lots of difficult fights with lots of difficult bosses that you can completely ignore if you talk your way out of them. Yes, there will be times where you will be able to kill enemy by talking to them. Difficult bosses, you're going to be able to kill them just by being a Paladin and being eloquent and having a silver tongue. That being said, let's begin with level 1, and the race is not going to be that important. And I say that important because yes, race shields are a thing. There are certainly better classes for something different, like for example the Tieflings are going to get new smites and whatnot. But I usually like to choose with whatever thing that I feel like role-playing as, and something that I find comfortable with. I'm a basic dude, I'm just going to choose the human, but you can choose whichever race you want to. And then we have the Oath. The Oath is also going to be relevant because the core skeleton of the build is not going to be relying in any of those things. All of the Oaths are going to get your protection aura, and then after that you are going to receive some certain specific aura that we are most likely not going to be able to achieve, and because of leveling and whatnot. Now, the ability scores that I have for you right here, they are actually quite interesting. Right now we're sitting on 16 strength, 12 dexterity, 14 constitution, wisdom 10 to be able to bypass saving throws, and then charisma on 15. And I have the 15 charisma because I used the Ethel questline to be able to get that one more ability score. So ideally, if you do that, you can have 16, 12, 14 and 15. If you do not want to do that, you can certainly lower some points into dexterity and compensate. Usually dexterity, what we're going to be using it for, it's just going to be for initiative. If you're able to find items with initiative, that is not going to be that important. And as a matter of fact, initiative is not that important for our Paladin, because at the end of the day, no one's going to be able to hit him. So we don't really care that the enemy attacks first, and we do. Now at level 2, we are going to choose our fighting style. There are some things that you could do. You could most certainly be a two-hander Paladin or a one-hander Paladin. For this specific showcase and how I have built my Paladin, I like dueling because we're going to be using sword and shield, because that is going to be invincible. If on the other hand you want to go for great weapon fighting to use two-handed weapons, you can, just have in mind that this is going to rely a little bit more on party play. The dueling Paladin with one-handed weapon and shield, he's going to be able to lone wolf whatever he wants to, because he's going to have lots and lots of armor class. On the other hand, the great weapon fighting Paladin is going to deal that much more damage, just a tiny little bit more damage, but it's not going to be as efficient on survivability. like his counterpart is going to be. So he can, by all means, you can choose great weapon fighting, but he's going to have to be a little bit more of a party play. You are going to rely a little bit more on your teammates. The spells, honestly, we are not going to be using anything fancy, and as a matter of fact, as we level up, the only thing that we are going to be using, it's just going to be Divine Smite, and that's it. We're going to be using smites and smites and smites. The one thing that you are going to take as a must, and this is a core, essentially a quintessential part of the build, is going to be Shield of Fate. Command is very useful on the early levels of the game, and also Cure Wounds because you can heal yourself whenever you have the need to, but it's really not that important. So other than that, this is just how it's going to be. At level 3 you are going to receive Divine Health, and that is amazing because you're not going to be... no one is going to be able to debuff you with diseases. And then we're also going to receive some of our Oath spells. This is my favorite, Speak with Animals. I did take the Oath of Nature because I love to be able to speak with the animals, and since you are a charismatic characters, you are going to be able to bypass the conversations and social checks with animals as well. Now this is the interesting thing, when you reach level 4 you are going to have to make a decision, you are going to need to make a choice. There's two things that you can do. We can either improve our strength to a maximum level of 20. The downside of this build, this Sorcadin, is that we're not going to be able to reach all of our 3 ability scores because we are going to be multi-classing at level 6. We are going to be missing out on one selection for features. But the one thing that you could take, it's going to be probably Warcaster, because this build is going to heavily rely on always have our concentration for our spells. Some items that we are going to have, they are going to require for you to have concentration to deal damage and both to have survivability, and your constitution is going to contribute to this. But the thing is that you can also use a reaction to cast Shocking Grasp at moving enemies, so that is always something nice. But since we're never, I mean, this is up to your personal preference. I think that it is a nice idea to go with Warcaster if you decided to go with the two-handed Paladin. But since we are such a strong Paladin, as you were able to see at the beginning of the video, the enemy is never going to be able to hit us. Ideally, I would say that we want to increase our damage a little bit more, and we should pop up all of our strength on all the way up to level 20. At level 5 we are going to get our extra attack, which is going to be gorgeous, it's going to be beautiful, it's going to be amazing. You're going to get new spells, and a lot of people like to go with magic weapon. I usually do not advise for you to do so. I mean, if you're trying to go on the path of being like dealing more damage, you can, but honestly we have so much damage and so much survivability that taking this thing, I just think that it's way too overkill, and it's not going to give you the return of being a tanky damage dealing Paladin. I think that there's a nice balance and synergy between this Paladin on damage and defense, and if you go all the way into damage, you are going to be opening yourself too much to be killed. You're not going to be by all means, you're not going to be a glass cannon, but I think that we have more than enough damage to be able to negate this thing. A lot of people likes magic weapon. If you like magic weapon, by all means you can use magic weapon, but I still would choose every time 2 levels into armor class instead of 1 level 2 attack roll and 1 dice for damage roll. Other than that, we're going to get our extra attack, and then we're going to also get our Misty Step from our Oath, which is Oath of the Nature. But I mean, again, this is it's amazing, it's something nice, but it's not going to be a core part of the build. At level 6 we are going to get our Aura Protection, which is going to allow us to have a little bit more of our saving throws. And at this point we are done with everything that Paladin has to offer to us. Now we are going to be multi-classing into a Sorcerer, and let's see what is it that the Sorcerer is going to give us. The cantrips are not really going to be that amazing, they are not going to be that important, and as a matter of fact I would advise for you to use utility cantrips, because when it comes to combat, all of our combat is going to be coming from our main dealing Paladin. The thing that is going to be a game changer for you is going to be shield. Shield is always prepared, and basically when an enemy is going to hit you, you can use a level 1 spell slot, which you are going to have lots and lots and lots of level 1 spell slots, to increase your armor class by 5. And if you build the Paladin, like I am going to show you on the itemization that we are going to have, you're going to have 28 of armor class. That basically means that almost the enemy has nearly going to have to roll a critical hit for him to be able to deal damage to you, which is filthy. Getting that extra shield on your it's going to protect you that much more. Now the subclass, we're going to go with the Draconic Bloodline. We are going to be missing out on the armor class that this is going to give us because it's going to negate itself, but I usually like to take the hit points because we're going to be losing quite a lot of hit points of going into the Sorcerer. Not that we're going to need them, but it's always better to be safe than sorry. And then at level 8 of the, we're going to be level 2 Sorcerer right here. Again, the spells I would advise always to take, like for example False Life or utility spells, because they are going to contribute to your survivability of your Paladin. On the other hand, the main damage that we're going to have is going to be mainly from our smites. Now, our meta magic, I would advise that the most important one would be Twin Spell, to be able to cast double spells at level 11 or level 12, and we're not going to replace any spells. And basically what we are doing right here, it wasn't really true on the gameplay, on the showcase right there, but at this point, if you would go all the way into Paladin, you wouldn't have the level 3 spell slots that we are able to get right now because of the multi-class, so meaning that we can now upcast our Divine Smites all the way up to level 3, and we have 5 spell slots of level 1 to be able to use different things like our Shield of Fate or our Reaction Shield, which is going to also be a reaction whenever the enemy is going to be dealing damage to us. We can use shields as a reaction to waste 1 level spell slot. You should never use level 2 spell slots because it's not going to upcast into something more powerful. It's just the version, the level 1. This is the one that you should be doing. And yeah, basically that is the leveling section of the Paladin. Alright, now let's talk about itemization. First and foremost, the thing that we're going to be looking for is the heaviest possible armor that you can find. Always, at all time. It doesn't really matter what kind of armor. Act 1, just try to find the heaviest possible armor that you can find. Plate armor, please. At all times, the heaviest that you can find. There is an amazing heavy plate armor, which is this one, Flood Hell Tusk armor. And also, some of the items that you will find in this game, you will get them on a certain specific dungeon on Act 2. That is going to be the Die Justiciar Gauntlets. These guys are going to give you 1d4 necrotic damage. And then we are also going to have the Killer's Sweetheart. The Killer's Sweetheart, basically this gives you a free critical hit whenever you kill an enemy. And it's going to be recharged after long rests. So every long rest you are able to immediately one-shot 1 people on 1 single combat. That's amazing. Now for those 3 items, you are going to be able to find them on the Grand Mausoleum, which is in Act 2. I do not want to spoil anything on this game for new players, so I'm not going to spoil anything on the dungeon. I just want to tell you, once you get to this place, once you enter that place, be thorough, explore everything that you can find inside that. The loot that you can find inside that, it's amazing, and that is where you're going to get those items. The Cloak of Protection. This thing basically gives us a +1 armor class. And you can get that +1 armor class with this gal right here, which is the merchant, the merchant that you are going to find on the last light in. The Boots of Striding, these guys, they are going to immediately allow us that we are never going to be knocked prone, we're never going to be moved against our will, we're going to get a +1 to athletics, provided that we are concentrated. So whenever we have concentration, we cannot be knocked down, meaning that we're always going to have our amazing armor class from our spell. This is also true for surfaces that would make you go prone. So for example, if you have ice surfaces, which is something amazing, if you have a sorcerer or some different class that can cast ice on surfaces, that's amazing. That's actually you as a sorcerer. If you pick up some ice spells as you are leveling up, you are going to be able to freeze surfaces for the enemy to be it will be difficult for the enemy to reach you, and no, there's not going to be any kind of difficult for you to move around that. Now, the Broadmother's Revenge. This one is going to give you a 1d6 poison damage whenever you receive healing from any item, which is amazing. To get this thing, you have to kill someone that I think that no one is going to miss. Yeah, there is no other way to get this thing. Now this, I'm going to need your assistance of getting this. While you have concentration, you are going to get a 1d4 psychic damage, which is more stacks that you are going to receive for your smites. The thing is that I can't, for the love of myself, remember where did I get this thing. There is no wiki right now that gives you the location of this thing, so if you think that you know where this thing is located, then please, by all means. If I manage to find it, I'm going to pin it on the comment section and also on the video description. But my guess, where I think that I found this thing, because of the capabilities that it has and kind of like the context of the ring, this is where I would put my bet that I found that ring on the crutch, on the Rosy Morn Monastery. I think that's where I found it, but I could be mistaken. Anyways, if you not manage to find this ring, it's just going to be a 1d4 less damage that you are going to receive, which is it's nice damage, but I mean it's not a mandatory part of the build. Now, if you're able to build the character like we did, if you're able to find all of the items of the character like we did, you are going to be able to cast. Also, one thing that I forgot to mention is that it's always a nice idea to have Gale as a sorcerer or as a wizard for Gale to cast haste on you. If someone casts haste on you, you're going to be able to use your smite 4 times per battle. And also you can use a haste potion. It's always advisable for you to haste your paladin, because the paladin can kill people in one shot, and if you're able to cast 4 times the smite, that is just going to make the paladin more deadly. Now, if we're able to follow all of that together, all of the items, we are going to get 14 to 52 damage, but if we receive a healing source from anywhere, so this is something that you need to do whenever you start the combat, you use a potion of healing, and once you use the potion of healing, your smite that you are going to be able to upcast all the way to level 3 is going to have 15 to 56. But also to remember that we can also concentrate ourselves to receive that extra 1d4, and that is going to yield us a beautiful, amazing, gorgeous, divine, filthy 16 to 60 damage. You're going to be able to kill people, one-shot people with this thing. Now, a final recommendation that I would give you is that I do not know if I should be advising this, because this is a roleplay value for people, so I do not know how do you feel about taking tadpoles. Yeah, look at the 4 of the far realms. It basically gives you a free critical hit. So if you want to use tadpoles, if you want to take tadpoles and place them on those little holes in your brain, that is something that you can do. So basically, if you pair that up with the ring that we acquire for that specific dungeon, then that means that you're able to critical hit people to oblivion and kill more people, be more deadly. So yeah, it's something that you might want to consider, but it's not a mandatory thing. At the end of the day, if you want to be deadly, you have to be making some concessions. Anyways, if you like the content, like and very super appreciated. No one's told you today that you're a gorgeous and beautiful person. You're indeed a gorgeous and beautiful person. I will be seeing you goddamn gorgeous and beautiful people in the next one. Subscribe to the channel and like the video before I close the door. A beautiful day and goodbye.